As a fitness professional, you know the joy of helping others, and you know it's more than just fitness. We're training the whole person. Wellness coaching provides expertise that goes beyond fitness and nutrition. It's a holistic approach to helping others become their best selves while reaching their goals. To us, there's no greater joy than that. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified wellness coach. Go to nasm.org/wellness.
You're listening to the Mindful Drinking Podcast with Derek Brown on the NASM Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Mindful Drinking Podcast, where we talk about tips and information that you can use to drink more mindfully. My name is Derek Brown, and I'm an award-winning bartender, author of Mindful Mixology, a comprehensive guide to no and low alcohol cocktails, and an NASM certified wellness coach. And actually, I'm working on another certification too. It is the NASM certified nutrition coach, which is a really fantastic program. Not to add just what I do. I really enjoy just in general learning. I really enjoy, even though I'm almost 50 years old, I still try to learn as much as I can. And certainly NASM has some wonderful programs. The certified nutrition coaching is a fantastic one. The certified wellness coach as well. And I think I'm just a lifelong learner, right? It's the way I'm built. And so certainly, in fact, I joke around that on my deathbed, I'll probably be reading a book. So because of that, over the last 2 years, I've also been studying at the University of Pennsylvania to get a certification and a degree in positive psychology. And there's many reasons for that, which I'll get into in a minute, but it's a really great program. And University of Pennsylvania is the home of positive psychology. That was where Dr. Martin Seligman, who founded the program, he also was one of the founders, and in fact, the principal founder of positive psychology, and he remains at the university. And so I wanted to go there in particular because there's just, a great source of information. And also it's online. The school is online. And at this point, I don't really want to show up in a classroom per se. I like studying from the comfort of my own home. So, but I've achieved the certification, still working on the degree. And I thought that I'd take this opportunity to share a little bit about what I've learned and how it's important to mindful drinking. And so I want to start by saying that, look, bartenders are often considered psychologists, but I have to be clear on that. We are not psychologists. We are not. In fact, bartenders are not required to take any psychology courses. You might not know that. They're not required to take a single psychology course, although there's probably plenty of bartenders out there who have, and even some who are have gotten degrees in counseling and therapy and psychology and so forth, but is not required. And you don't want us to be your psychologist. And honestly, a lot of times we don't want to be psychologists. People come to the bar and they unload, and that's a great deal of what they call emotional work. I don't necessarily want to hear everybody's problems every night when I'm bartending. So it's probably good to leave that stereotype behind. Certainly a piece of advice is always, there. There's that opportunity, and bartenders can be very wise people. So I would definitely seek advice from time to time, but I think it's the psychology that you don't need to necessarily seek from a bartender. But I decided that I wanted to go back to study positive psychology, specifically because I wanted to see how that intersected with mindful drinking, but also I just want to live a good life, right? I think everybody does. And even though that we know certain things that lead to a good life instinctively, I think that, creating a framework for that is really important, and making sure that you kind of, for me at least, know all of the details that will really help you flourish, which is a word we're going to, get into in a second. But what is positive psychology? Because obviously I'm making this distinction between positive psychology and psychology. So let me start there and say that positive psychology is the scientific study of well-being. Traditional psychology tends to focus, well, they both focus on mental processes and behaviors and how those are sometimes a reciprocal relationship. Um, so it certainly, they both share that in common. But traditional psychology tends to focus more on adverse experiences that people have gone through. And the way that I really like to look at it is if the goal is to have a full tank of gas, right? The positive psychology is the fuel that that you can use to lead a more healthier, better life. Whereas traditional psychology is kind of plugging the leaks in your gas tank. Both of them help to fill your life, but one of them is focusing more on the adverse experiences, the other one more on well-being and something on flourishing. Now, notice I didn't use the word happiness. I mean, I think we all want happiness, but I think that can also be an incredibly kind of, um, oversimplified statement. Happiness generally is just associated with feeling good. And I think that a life well lived and flourishing and well being isn't just about feeling good. And so sometimes there is this toxic positivity, and there are people who are looking just to obtain that immediate pleasure and happiness. But that's not really what positive psychology is about. And so I want to make that distinction right up front. And the term flourishing, which I promised to get to, so I will right now, is really from Greek philosophy. It goes back to a term called eudaimonia, which is essentially a Greek word that means a life well lived or to flourish. And so there really is not this one thing that you obtain that you flourish and you're done. It's more about the sort of path of your life. And so, of course, I want to live a better life. I'm sure you do too. It's probably part of why you're listening to it. So I want to make sure that that's part of what I cover and I talk about. And so going back to school really helped me to provide a framework for that, and especially in positive psychology. Now they have a acronym that stands for sort of the different facets of well-being, and each one of them is sort of something we seek in and of itself. And so that acronym is called PERMA. All right. And so what that stands for is positive emotions, engagement, sometimes called flow, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. Like I said, some of this stuff is already something you probably have thought about. Definitely you want to have positive emotions. I'm sure that you consider your relationships important to well-being, and maybe you thought about meaning in a grand sense, but I want to break those down just a little bit and talk about the intersection with bartending and positive psychology. So the first thing that I'll talk about are something that in positive psychology they spend a great deal of time on, and for a good reason. They talk about character strengths. And I've actually talked about character strengths on past episodes, especially when I did an episode with Darlene Marshall, who is on the NASM podcast network, has a show called Better Than Fine, and is also a master of positive psychology. So she knows a great deal. And we had talked about in the episode about ultra processed drinks, I took that opportunity to ask her a little bit about character strengths. And so basically, these are the different parts of our personality that we have that help us to live a better life. And everybody has all of these character strengths, just 24 of them, in the categories of 6 different categories: wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. And we just have them to different degrees. Like, for instance, my character strengths are very strong on spirituality and curiosity and love. Other people, they might have a different set of character strengths that really are their key character strengths. And over time, that may even change. But I really want to talk about temperance, because I think that's one of the first things that really intersects with drinking. If you haven't heard this word before, temperance essentially just means having a balanced approach to eating, drinking, thinking, all different aspects of our life. But really, a lot of times it's associated with drinking. In fact, there was an entire temperance movement in the 19th century in the United States and throughout the world. And that was tied to religion, especially. And temperance is often associated with virtues and religion. But in this case, it really just means a set of character strengths that are important that we develop so that we can, drink in a way that meets our values and goals. And so temperance is one aspect of that. And I think that that's really important. I think, in fact, temperance is it can be satirized as this like kind of stern preacher, like wagging his finger and telling you not to do this, not to do that. But I think it actually helps us to enjoy on a deeper level, because when we're just mindlessly drinking, just throwing back drinks, we tend to forget about it. Literally, we brown out or even black out, and we lose track of what we drank, who we talked to, what we did. That's not pleasure. That's just an absolute, kind of disorientation and confusion. And so I think that, being temperate in our approach to drinking and food too helps us to enjoy it at a deeper level, right? I don't know if you've ever applied mindfulness in eating. I'm just going to take a little aside here. But I did this once. I was doing a course on MBSR. Like I said, I'm just always learning, always trying to pick up new information. And that's on mindfulness-based stress reduction. And we were instructed to eat a single raisin. I'm not a fan of raisins, by the way. I don't often eat raisins. So that's, in the first place, I'm not going to choose raisins. But in this case, that was what they asked. So I picked a single raisin and ate it. But you're supposed to mindfully enjoy it and really take time to sit with it and think about its different aspects of it, the flavors, the textures, all of that. And damned if I didn't actually enjoy that raisin. So it was an interesting approach, because I realize that very often when I'm eating or drinking, I'm always thinking about the next sip. I'm always thinking about the next thing. And so that helped me to be a little bit more mindful and temperate in the way I drink and eat. And so that's especially true if you're a connoisseur and you're enjoying like a really nice scotch or even a really wonderful non-alcoholic beverage. You can sit and savor it. Savor is another thing we're going to talk about in a minute. You're listening to the Mindful Drinking Podcast. My name is Derek Brown, and we're talking about how positive psychology can help you drink more mindfully. And now we're talking about a term called savoring. So this is a concept in positive psychology that refers to thinking about an event, and it can be from the past, present, or future. And that event is something that that basically gave you joy or pleasure, but a really deeply satisfying moment. And how that moment can be recalled, or even in the moment, you can take that moment to really just savor it. And this is somewhat of an intervention in positive psychology, because sometimes, again, we just brush right past things, like whether we're eating or drinking or having a conversation or watching a beautiful sunset. Sometimes you just brush right past it and forget to enjoy that moment. And again, even later, you can picture it and bring up that wonderful image. I mean, I honestly, I don't drink anymore. I've been clear about that. And I still think about some of the delicious drinks I had, cognac or a wonderful scotch, a rye whiskey that was 30 years old. There's really wonderful, things that I drank over time, also non-alcoholic beverages too. So I don't want to privilege one over the other, but just to say that, there's a range of beverages that you can really sit down and savor. So that's an important part of positive psychology and bartending, drinking here. Another one I want to mention is flow, which in the PERMA model is engagement/flow. Obviously, the F doesn't fit within the acronym as well, so it's kind of in parentheses to the side. But that was a concept by another founder of positive psychology, which is Mihai Sentinihai, which is a name that I often butcher, and I think I did okay there. So he is a psychologist who studied the concept of flow. And I had never really thought about this before, but the easiest way to say it is we're lost in the moment, right? Like that moment is where we just really aren't thinking about time, or we're not anxious, or we're not, really present in a, I'm sorry, not, we're not really self-aware in that sense. We're just kind of present and doing what we do. Um, and that can happen for a range of activities. I skateboard. It definitely happens when I'm skateboarding. I play guitar. It certainly happens then. Chess, things like that. It can happen when I'm writing. It can happen during a really great conversation. But it happened the most when I was bartending. When I was bartending and there was a busy night, I would, almost wake up as if in a dream at the end of the shift and be like, wow, that went by. And I had a great time, and I really deeply enjoyed it. And the reason why is because I have a certain skill level, and this was a certain challenge. And so the skill butted up right against the amount of challenge, which I think is the perfect space for us, where we get to meet that challenge and we get to really do something that's a little harder than we're used to, or just generally hard. And that helps us to, really, really just be present. And so, maybe you don't bartend, but another way that relates to drinking is that, having a great conversation. And another guest on my show was Dr. Edward Slingerland. Um, check that episode out. That was Alcohol and Evolution. And he talked about the concept of flow and how alcohol, in a way, can help people more easily get into flow in this sort of chemically induced way. But it's probably not the most effective maybe it's effective in the sense that it's easier, and it's effective in the sense that, that's something you can go and drink. You find alcohol all over the place, but there are ways to do it that I think are more satisfying and that are leave us with a greater connection, and obviously don't have the health effects that alcohol can have. And so I think that when you're having a great conversation, when you're really deeply savoring something, and maybe you're going through a series of tastings, those are ways that you can really get lost in the flow. And it's more about the flow than it is about the alcohol. So I think that's a really important one. I didn't want to neglect this really kind of obvious one, but maybe you hadn't thought about it. Definitely didn't think about it before I'd taken positive psychology. Another co-founder of positive psychology, remember there's Dr. Martin Seligman, but one of his colleagues was a gentleman by the name of Christopher Peterson. And in a book he was writing about positive psychology, and really just saying the essence of it, if you were to drill it down to 3 words, would be other people matter, which I think is really great. Other people matter. That's something that I think is at the essence of what I do with bartending and drinking. When I'm creating these drinks, when I'm serving them, it is for other people. And it is nice to sit and enjoy again and savor and have this moment with a really, incredible, complex, adult, sophisticated beverage. But it's even more wonderful in my estimation to share that with somebody else, to actually make this great beverage, using all my skill, and then serving to somebody, and having them enjoy it. Because look, life can be very hard. I don't think I have to tell you that. And I wouldn't be studying well-being. You wouldn't be curious about well-being if it wasn't for the times it can be somewhat difficult. And I think that means that there's times that, we might need a distraction. We might need to sit down and just enjoy something separate from our busy lives. And that's one of the things I loved about being bartender, is providing that drink for somebody, sharing that with somebody, and maybe for just a little while, taking them away from the stress of their daily life. And that wasn't just about the alcohol. It could have been any drink, but it was really just providing this great environment, the service, all of that coming together. And so that to me is really the essence of bartending, as well as positive psychology, that other people matter. And you really, even if you're not a bartender, you can apply that in so many different ways. You can make a delicious drink for somebody tonight. right now. You can go get a recipe and you can make it and try it out on somebody. And I think that you'll find that it's incredibly satisfying. Now, there's just two more concepts that I wanted to cover on positive psychology. By the way, there's a lot that positive psychology has contributed to the science of well-being. And there's certain things like gratitude, resilience, and grit that are you might have even heard of. I mean, certainly gratitude. I know you've heard of that, but there's gratitude exercises that came out of positive psychology. And if you've ever read Angela Duckworth, she talks about grit, and those have certainly been part of my career and my journey. Um, but but I found a little bit more of an intersection in these last two, which is meaning and accomplishment, right? Those are the last two letters of the PERMA model, meaning and accomplishment. And so with meaning, I found making drinks incredibly meaningful. But let's clarify something here. When we're talking about meaning, we don't even really mean it in this overarching narrative, right? Like God, country, and all of that. There that certainly you can derive meaning from that, and those are important. But it's not about those grand narratives. It's more about these small acts that add meaning to your life, right? So if you really think about it, the act of making that drink for somebody can be incredibly meaningful, especially if it's an important relationship to you, especially if it's somebody you're trying to court or whatever, or it's somebody that you're just um, or maybe you just want to get lost in that process. I mean, these are meaningful moments for us. And, in particular, I put a lot of thought into the cocktails that I create. They're not just, a bunch of things mixed together. It's a story. I'm actually, I pick the name, I pick these ingredients because in a way that they tell a story. It might be that I really love this base spirit from this specific area, and I want to make sure that that's built with all these wonderful ingredients that complement it. Or it might be that I just had an idea in mind about a time or place or person, and I want to put all those things together. So the story is part of it, and it's very meaningful for me. And so I think that when you're seeking meaning in your life, you don't have to look on high. You can look for small things that really just provide you with a sense of meaning. I also find meaning from being a father. I find meaning from, helping my partner out. I find meaning from even helping random people out sometimes. So I think it's something that can be in these small little interactions and doesn't have to be, again, a grand narrative. Now, accomplishment, I'm very lucky that in my career I've been recognized for a number. In the beginning, I say award-winning bartender, right? You're supposed to just know that there's these awards that I got, but and I'm not going to list them, but there is one in particular that I got earlier this year from the Bar and Restaurant Expo, and that's a convention that happens every year in Las Vegas, and they honor people for different things. And this one was for the Industry Impact Award, right? So it's people who are making a large impact within the industry, in this case, hospitality, and are doing something good. And the reason that's so meaningful for me is not the award itself. I actually don't even remember what the award looks like, or the pomp and circumstance around it, which was cool. I mean, I liked it, but it kind of faded quickly. It's really because that's what I set out to do. That's why I'm here right now. That's why I'm talking to you. I'm trying to make an impact in this world that hopefully does some good. And so when somebody, gave me an award for that, I was just blown away. Not just, again, because of the pomp and circumstance, but just because I did what I set out to do. And that was incredible, right? That sense of accomplishment, that validation of my purpose in life. And so I continue to seek that, not just in the awards, but in all kinds of things. Even when I'm just making a cocktail for somebody and I really want them to enjoy it, and they do. Wow, that is just an incredible moment, and which in some ways is on par with a industry impact award. Like, to me, it's not about the award itself. It's about the sense of accomplishment, getting what you set out to do, getting that done. So, so I think that, all of this is to really say that, you know, it's we give a lot of heavy lifting to alcohol, right? We believe that it does a lot for us. I hear people all the time talking about how, the things that it makes them, braver, and that it gives them, um, it relieves stress, all of these different things. And I'm not saying it doesn't. That's their experience, and maybe it's true. But I think sometimes we don't recognize that we are doing the lifting, that it's in fact us and these aspects of our well-being that are more critical and important to the cocktail than the cocktail is important to us or the spirit. And so all of this is really to say that, PERMA is a great model, but you don't throw a C on the end of it. It's not PERMA cocktails. Cocktails are not going to make you, well, I was going to use the word happy, but flourish. But they can in the context of these other things. And so I think that's the important part of it. So there was this really great quote from a British writer and philosopher named G.K. Chesterton, when he just said, "Drink because you're happy." And I think that that's a really great way. And, for me, the best drink that I've ever had, no drink I've enjoyed more, is when I've made it with skill. It meant something to me. I drank it mindfully, sharing with people I love, and they told me that they enjoyed it. That, to me, is why we make cocktails in the first place. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Mindful Drinking Podcast. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you learned some things that'll help you to perhaps drink more mindfully, or even live a meaningful life, a life well lived. So we always are grateful when you like, comment, and reach out to us. So please make sure that your voice is being heard. And as always, here's to mindful drinking.